Hello and welcome to How to Pay for Grad School Before, During, and After. As the title suggests, paying for grad school is something you need to plan for not only before you start, but it also needs to be managed during grad school. And lastly, after you have completed your program, it is important to know your repayment and possibly loan forgiveness options. This webinar was developed by the Office of Graduate and Professional Studies in conjunction with the Office of Financial Aid at St. Mary's College. It is designed to be an overview of financial aid available to graduate students, but it is not intended to replace information or advice provided directly by the Financial Aid Office. Here are some things to consider. Remember, timing is everything. Apply for financial aid at the same time you are applying for admission to your program of study to allow sufficient time for processing. And this normally is about 6 to 8 weeks. Be prepared in all aspects of your life: budget, family, health, personal mindset, other life events or obligations. You may need to adjust your lifestyle in terms of spending. You need to realize that no one funding source is going to cover all your costs. So think diversification and give yourself enough time to do the proper research. You almost certainly will need to take out a loan, but there are ways to offset that cost. There are many possible sources of financial aid in addition to federal loans: grants, private loans, work-study, scholarships, sometimes fellowships, assistantships, employer reimbursement, or veterans dependent benefits. And I did want to mention here that St. Mary's is a yellow ribbon school. Unfortunately, international students are not eligible for federal loans and grants. These students should explore home country-based or government-sponsored scholarships, school-specific scholarships, or private loans, which may require a U.S. sponsor. In terms of the types and sources of scholarships, here are a few: school-specific or program-specific. Here at St. Mary's, the School of Education, the Graduate School of Business, the MFA in Creative Writing, the MA in Kinesiology, and the MFA in Dance all offer partial scholarships for incoming or current students. You can find out more details by going to the individual program websites. Professional associations or organizations in your field, for example, California Association of School Counselors, or the National Association of School Psychologists. Another one is the American Association of University Women, but these are just a few examples. Disadvantaged categories sometimes are offered scholarships. Minorities, for example, the Hispanic Association of Schools and Colleges. Single mothers, the disabled, veterans, women returning to the workforce. Those are some examples that you might use in Googling scholarships for those individual categories. Here at SMC, the library provides access to the American Grants and Loans catalog for students interested in finding assistance with grants, scholarships, subsidies, government aid, and loans. If you go to the librarians there are extremely friendly and happy to help you with this kind of a search. You can also search the web yourself for scholarships. A couple of websites to check out would be FastWeb, Peterson's, or Student Scholarship Search. Research scholarship opportunities and note the application deadlines and award timeframes. Remember, you can apply for a scholarship, but being awarded one is not a given. So make sure you have applied for a loan amount sufficient to cover your needs. Then, if you are awarded a scholarship, you can always decline the disbursement for a particular term. You work with the financial aid office on that. Again, they're very helpful with this. Everyone should complete the FAFSA, which stands for Free Application for Federal Student Aid. This is in case your financial circumstances change mid-year. And even if you don't intend to take out a loan, some of the need-based scholarships will require you to complete a FAFSA. A new FAFSA must be submitted at the beginning of every calendar year. But you are funded based on the courses taken during the academic year. And the academic year runs from July 1st through June 30th. Submitting a FAFSA automatically initiates the loan process. However, if you decide ultimately that you don't want a loan, it would be well if you let the financial aid office know that. The correct URL to access FAFSA is, as you see on the screen, www.fafsa.ed.gov. FAFSA.com is not the same thing. And although they are a student financial services company, they will charge you to fill out what is already a free form. So why do it? In addition to the FAFSA, go to studentloans.gov to complete a graduate entrance counseling and also to execute your master promissory note for the direct loan. And as I mentioned on the screen here, you will be notified, generally you'll be notified via email regarding the availability of your loan and your loan package. Now there are two types of student loans, unsubsidized direct and graduate plus. The direct loan maximum is $138,500. However, there's no maximum for Grad Plus. You are not eligible for Grad Plus if you have adverse credit history, like a bankruptcy, late payer status, if you've defaulted on a loan, or you have excessive credit card debt. The direct loan, it does not depend on your credit worthiness, but the Grad Plus loan does. You need to apply only once at the beginning of your program for the direct loan, but you must reapply every year for Grad Plus. I'll say it again, you can always decline a disbursement during a specific term if you get a scholarship. Remember, if your program offers a Jan term, and I know some of the School of Education, some of its programs start in the Jan term, there is no regular disbursement of financial aid at that time. So you need to arrange for those funds to be added to the preceding fall term if you're a current student, or to have it added to the spring disbursement if you're an incoming student. Talk to the business office, though, directly about this. Make sure they understand your situation. Don't assume that they know. But, you know, we're a small school, and one of the advantages is that you can, you know, talk to people, and they're willing to work with you and work out these situations. Now, here's an example of a direct loan repayment. Sam has borrowed $20,500 under the direct loan program. This is the standard model and the default for anyone coming out of deferment. Remember, if you don't indicate otherwise, and once you graduate 6 months later, you'll be automatically placed in the standard repayment program. And these are the terms. Now here's an example of a Grad Plus loan repayment model. This shows the standard, well, not the standard, the standard repayment rather for a Grad Plus loan. And as you can see, the Grad Plus loan interest rate is slightly higher. I think what we saw was that the direct loan was 6.21 and the Grad Plus loan is 7.21. And again, this one does rely on, does consider your credit history. Both payments are over 10 years. I'd like to take a moment just to cover some financial literacy basics that I think are important for everybody to be aware of. So what is a credit score? Because your student loans can substantially affect your overall credit and vice versa, it's worth this time to spend a few moments. You may have heard of the term FICO, which stands for Fair, Isaac, and Company. This is the most common type of credit card score. Ranges from 300 to 850, and the higher the better. No single cutoff, as I mentioned here, and the scores are fluid. They are recalculated regularly. In terms of what FICO looks at, what are the score factors? FICO considers how are you paying your accounts? How much money do you currently owe? How long have your accounts been open? What different types of credit do you use? How much credit do you use compared to the amount of credit you have available? And how often and how recently have you applied for credit? Having a lot of credit cards, even if you pay them off, is not necessarily a good thing, but because it shows as the amount of credit you have available. So if you have credit cards that you're not using, instead of just not using them, better to actually close those accounts. The FICO score does not evaluate, your age, race, religion, sex, marital status, your occupation, your salary, or employment history, where you live, child family support obligations, rental agreements, and student loans in deferment. So in terms of your FICO score, you can ask a lender for score reasons if you're denied credit, because understanding what those reasons are can help you improve your FICO score over time. So just to sum up a little bit on this, you can improve your credit behavior by making your loan credit payments on time, reducing open lines of credit, especially newer credit, and keeping your balances low, or better yet, paying them off in full every month. You can correct inaccurate information, keep your information updated, and dispute mistakes. That's why it's always good to get a credit report, so you can make sure that if there's anything there in error, you can make sure that it's corrected. So you can improve, but you cannot repair poor credit. And there's some credit companies out there that claim to be able to repair your credit, but that's really a waste of money. It's, bad credit will stay with you for 10 years, so the best thing you can do is start to improve it immediately. So you might be asking, if you have other student loans, what is my student loan repayment? Well, the first thing you need to know is what your total loan debt is in detail. And you can get that, anybody can get that, by going to the National Student Loan Data System. A couple of other things. Repayment of a student loan usually begins about 6 months after graduation. And we're going to talk a little bit more about the options you can look into beyond standard repayment or the default plan. There are things called income-based repayment, or IBR for short, pay-as-you-earn repayment, and also income contingent repayment, or ICR. In terms of repaying your student loans, here are some tips. Beyond even this list that I put here, or in addition to this list, setting up your payments automatically through your bank. That will reduce the chances of late or missing checks. Remember, the standard repayment period is 10 years. Use the National Student Loan Data System that I already mentioned. That tracks everybody's federal loans. Look at one of the options for repayment that meets your needs better. For example, income-based repayment, which allows your monthly payments to be capped at 15% of your discretionary income. Stay current on the law. The Project on Student Debt and the National Consumer Law Center's Student Loan Borrower Assistance Project have the latest and the greatest on student loan development. And know that if you end up in a dispute with your lender, the Federal Student Aid Ombudsman may be able to help you resolve the problem. So there are resources out there that you can take advantage of, but these are just some tips that you can follow. Now, in this presentation, you've been hearing a lot about various websites. I just want to let you know that following this webinar, you will receive an email listing all the websites that I've mentioned during the course of this broadcast. So let's go into a little bit more detail about repaying your loans. For private loans, you could be in default as soon as you miss a payment, so you really got to be careful about private loans. And really, in terms of the loan forgiveness programs that are available, those are only federal loans qualify for those programs. So as much as possible, you should try to stick with the federal loan options. If you default on either a private or federal loan, usually delinquent after 9 months, that will affect your credit and could prevent you from securing a credit card, a mortgage, an apartment, or even a job later on. Some terminology. Deferments are temporary suspensions of your payments. That is, your loan's going to deferment. Some of you may already have experienced this when you re-enroll in school. They also go into deferment if you're unemployed, or you face economic hardship, or due to a disability, certain military service, or following active duty in the military. Another term is forbearance. Forbearances are temporary postponements or reductions because of financial hardship. The only thing you need to remember is interest continues to accrue even if your payments are either in forbearance or deferment. Income-driven repayment plans are designed for those whose outstanding federal student loan debt is higher than their annual income or represents a significant portion of their annual income. You must apply for these repayment options. Otherwise, as I've said several times already, you will go into the standard or default repayment plan. Income-driven repayment plans include IBR, income-based repayment, ICR, or income contingent payment, or pay-as-you-earn. So you can use that an online tool at studentloans.gov. Someone has asked me in the past, well, how do you does the government know, or does the federal loan program know if you qualify? Well, if you are participating in the IBR program, once you initially qualify, you must transfer your tax information annually to confirm your eligibility before your IBR anniversary. Or in the absence of that information, you may be subjected to a higher payment. Extended payments such as these sometimes extend the time, but they'll also extend the interest. So you have to, be realistic about this. And graduating repayment is based on your earnings and how they increase over time. But the idea is that the government is trying to make your payments more manageable. And if you have large student loan debts, the monthly payment that you would have to make under standard repayment might be almost impossible for you to do. So you would qualify, make sure that you qualify for this, and this would be an option that would give you a much more manageable repayment. Couple that with loan forgiveness, which I'll talk about next. So public service loan forgiveness, the idea behind this is that we need more people working to serve the public. But sometimes those jobs do not pay as well as the private sector. Jobs like in schools or hospitals, the military, government, really any nonprofit will qualify as eligible employment for loan forgiveness. So in this situation, you qualify for income-based repayment because you're working in public service. Now your payments are much smaller and more manageable. You still have to make them for 10 years under the income-based repayment plan. But then, because you've been employed all this time in public service, then the federal government will pay off the balance, which under an income-based repayment plan, after 10 years, you are going to have a balance because you're paying less. But that loan forgiveness, that loan will be forgiven by the federal government. So this is truly a way of managing your costs. It just, as I said at the onset of this webinar, it really requires you to be vigilant and keeping good records and making sure that you've filled out the appropriate paperwork and qualified for the programs and provided the information that you need to. For those of you going into the teaching profession, there is, in addition to public service loan forgiveness, which of course teachers qualify for, there's also teacher loan forgiveness and the TEACH grant. So the TEACH grant, if you're enrolled in a state-approved teacher preparation program, which of course St. Mary's offers such a program, and you agree to teach a high-need subject area, which those areas are viewed as mathematics, science, foreign language, and special education. If you teach in those areas for 4 years in a low-income or low-performing school, sometimes known as a Title I school, you would qualify for the TEACH grant. And you can earn up to $4,000 for the year that you're in the credential program. The important thing to be aware of is if you do not complete your service commitment, then that grant turns into a loan. And it's very important that you take the service commitment seriously when you sign up for the TEACH grant. And our financial aid department will work with you on that, but they also insist that you be counseled by the School of Education to make sure that if you go into it, you know that the service commitment is something that you really need to adhere to. Eligible schools, if you're wondering how you figure out if a school is eligible, there's an annual directory of designated low-income schools for teacher cancellation benefits. In addition, there is a loan forgiveness specifically for teachers. So a highly qualified teacher holding at least a bachelor's degree and meeting the applicable standards of elementary, middle, or secondary school teaching credential, who is new to the profession and demonstrates competence in all the academic subjects in which the teacher teaches, could benefit from a loan forgiveness from anywhere from $5,000 to $17,000, depending on the school and the subjects taught. And so you, again, more money for teaching exclusively high-need subject area like math, science, special education. Even though an elementary school teacher teaches those subjects, because he or she is not teaching them exclusively, they don't qualify for it in that category. But as an elementary school teacher, you could teach at a low-income or low-performing school to qualify. And this is after 5 years in teaching that you would qualify for this loan forgiveness. So it is possible to double dip these two programs, public service loan forgiveness and the teacher-specific loan forgiveness program, depending on the total amount of your loan debt. There's some tax credits to be aware of. The Lifetime Learning Credit offers up to $2,000 per tax return for each year you pay for college. some terms here. That MAGI is the Modified Adjusted Gross Income, so you do have to qualify for the Lifetime Learning Tax Credit. And also you need to know that qualified education expenses don't include insurance, medical expenses, that includes student health fees, room and board, transportation, or other personal living or family expenses. There's also another tax credit called the American Opportunity Tax Credit, and this is a maximum annual credit of $2,500 per eligible student for qualified education expenses for the first 4 years of higher education. So this one's a little bit limiting. It just means that if you go straight from your undergrad into graduate school, in that first year you would qualify for this credit because you'd be completing your undergraduate degree and starting your graduate degree in the same year. So I'd like to just summarize a little bit of what we've been talking about this afternoon. Develop a funding plan. Get organized and keep good records. As you can see, this is quite a long process. Develop or modify your budget as needed. Follow developments or changes in the law. And then review your plan regularly, preferably annually, to make sure that you've reflected any changes in your situation. And that is pretty much wraps up what I have to share with you this afternoon. You see my contact information on the screen, and you're welcome to reach out to me if you have any questions, or you may ask questions right now. I've also listed, of course, the financial aid office and their contact information. But if you have any questions right now, I'd be happy to try to answer them to the best of my ability for everyone, because other people may have the same questions. So somebody's asking, does the FAFSA create a hard hit on your credit report? If not, why is it advantageous to apply for private loans at the same time, which likely creates a hard hit on your credit before you have acceptance information from the program? So I wasn't suggesting that you apply for private loans. Private loans are an avenue to pursue if you can't, but I would highly, highly recommend that you pursue federal loans. So for your student, I mean, if you have to take out a private loan for a car or a house, those things, if you're just applying for the direct loan, won't affect your FAFSA, because remember, the direct loan, that first $20,500 that you're eligible for under the direct loan program, it's not based on your credit worthiness. Okay, so then if you needed more money beyond the $20,500, you would go to the Grad Plus loan, and then they will look at your credit report and at your credit worthiness. And I'm not saying that you can't have any other credit, but it's just something you just need to, this is more about building your awareness of what they will look at in the process. I hope that answers your question, but you're welcome to call me if you have further questions. Call me or email me. I'm looking to see if anybody else has any questions. I'll pause here for a minute. Okay, question, do you participate in the federal Perkins loan program? So the Perkins, so most of what I've talked about here is for qualifying for as a graduate student. Perkins loans are generally for undergraduates. And here's the issue. If you undergraduates, or the limits in terms of loan amounts is different for undergraduates. So particularly this comes up a lot with people that are looking into the teaching profession. They're considering some of these other programs, and so they want to look at the undergraduate options. But by going into the undergraduate options and declaring yourself a credential-only student and not a graduate student, you're viewed as a credential student, you're viewed as a fourth-year undergraduate, and the maximum federal loan amount under the direct loan that you're eligible for is $12,500. And so most of you, as most of you know, I don't think I'm sharing anything that you're not already aware of. Most of the credential programs are going to ultimately cost upwards of $30,000. So depending on your other sourcing, $12,500 in the loan amount may not be sufficient, and that's why most graduate students tend to pursue it from that angle, where they get the $20,500 from the direct loan, and then they also apply for the Grad Plus loan to make up the difference. I hope that helps a little bit. Okay, I am just looking to see if there are any other questions. I do not see any other questions at this time. Oh, let's see, hold on. Okay, so here's one more question. Thanks so much. I really appreciate it. Just wanted to ask a question about one of the slides. What was the thing you said about having inactive credit cards? So when they calculate your credit score, I had this direct experience recently, they actually look at how many credit cards you have and whatever the limit is on that credit card, even if you're not charging anything on it, it's inactive. So that's the difference between canceling the credit card and then just not using it, and it's inactive. So even if it's inactive and you're not using it, it still shows up on your credit report as unused credit, and therefore is calculated in the risk of, gee, if this person went out and ran up all their credit cards, this is how much debt they could accrue. So they do consider that. So that was the point I was trying to make there. Okay, I am going to wrap this up then. I appreciate all of you who could join me this afternoon. Again, feel free to reach out, and I hope you found this beneficial. Have a great evening. Bye now.